Good morning, everybody. Video 44 coming at you with another video. Fresh out the shower. Started my day early, man. I got up at like 7 o'clock and checked on some music, see if anything had come out that I liked. Skimmed through it. I wasn't super excited about anything I heard. So I made the mistake of turning on Laker podcasts and content, and then was quickly reminded of just how close we are to the end of basketball for the Lakers in April, which is definitely not what Genie is paying for when you consider LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and all these other talented guys that we put together. I've been listening to the podcast, Laker Nation podcast, for the last 45 minutes before my shower, off and on, and I was listening to them say things like they were pleased with the roster, and you know, I mean, I've been pleased with the roster. I just pointed out what I thought were flaws early on, which was, in my mind, just not enough strength in the guard spot and the wing spot as it pertains to guys driving at the rim. The Lakers had benefited a great deal from Russell Westbrook's pressure on the rim, continuing to run straight at the rim over and over and over and over again, making it so that we had interior points no matter what, making it so that teams had to collapse on him, opening up the three-point arc for others. And this year, when we put together our roster, I felt like we put really nothing like that on the floor. The best player we had for that was LeBron James. We had let go of Schroeder, who did that. We let go of Lonnie Walker, who did that, and we didn't bring anybody on our team who could do that. Jalen Hood-Schifino is not that type of player. D'Lo's not that type of player. Maybe a little bit of Max Christie, but we obviously didn't use him. We just didn't have anybody that specialized at driving at the basket. And I thought that ate into Bron's energy, making it so that he would have to do that for the team, or, as he's prone to do, just stop doing it, you know, just out of sheer protecting of his energy in year 21. And because of it, I just felt like we didn't have that piece. And then Lakers could not afford to lose certain pieces this year. Vanderbilt not being on the team was not something we could afford. Christian Wood not being on the team, with the size disadvantages that we have and the fact that we got Anthony Davis, who's really not big enough to play the center position consistently as we would like him to. I just felt like we lost the key pieces that you couldn't afford to lose, and we had them gone for so much of the season, Gabe Vincent included, for different reasons when you consider his point of attack defense and his overall basketball IQ, which would have boosted this team if we would have had it for 82 games. When you had those pieces missing all year long, it's as if those pieces were not on the team and you couldn't see the full vision of the team. The vision that you have of the team is what is missing, and it made the team significantly worse all year long, not having those guys. And then you couple that with Darvin's inability to really work with what he had in a proper way that gave us the best opportunity to win every single night. His choices and rotations and things like that made the team even worse. So I think the Lakers were really at a disadvantage all year long, and we're never actually able to see the full vision of their team. But even if they had the full vision of their team, that for which I said was missing would still be missing. That person that put the ball on the floor and drove at the rim, besides LeBron James, with a certain level of strength and velocity that would force the defense to react. And we see it in this series a lot. Offensively, we don't have that piece. They can clog the paint, and we kind of don't move around enough, which I think is also a coaching issue. Stand around offense, we used to complain about that a lot with Frank Vogel. Darvin Ham is doing a lot of that this year, particularly in this series, in the third quarter. We just been doing a lot of standing around, get a ball to ISO situation player, and then not have any off-ball movement, which makes the defense able to settle in on whatever's going on without having to exert much energy on that side of the ball. It's a lot wrong, man. But I think if you had that piece that drove at the rim, it would force them to react. It would force them to foul. It would force them into situations that would make them a little more uncomfortable and have them have less energy on the offensive end, for which they are able to destroy you. The Lakers have the number 17th overall pick this year, and we have several needs that we need to meet. But I think the two things that I think the Lakers must address is getting that big man that you trust, that you can play for many minutes. If you can't get him in the draft, you got to trade the pick to get him. But a guy that we keep on the floor for many minutes, that a coach is going to trust, that we can put up against some of these bigger guys so that we don't have the Gordon rebounding issue that we've had in the series all series long. And if we would have been up against Minnesota, we would have had the same issue. If we would have been up against Phoenix, I think we would have had the same issue because those teams have length. Pelicans for 4 games straight probably would have been a problem for wearing our guys down and ultimately creating that same problem. I don't think the Lakers podcasts that I've been looking at really are taking into account how much of an issue rebounding would have been against really a lot of different teams, not just the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets have Gordon, Porter, and Jokic rebounding the ball, but there are other teams that we would have had the same issue with. And it needs to be addressed, man. It needs to be addressed. And there's really no excuse for not addressing it, given the fact that we have this asset that we're likely to receive. I believe the Pelicans will allow us to keep the 17th overall pick in this draft that is considered weak. I can't imagine they'd take the pick, but I think if they did take the pick from us, I think a lot of people would be pleased with that because it would leave us a better pick next year in theory, given the fact that the draft pool is going to be better and our team probably won't be. So either way, I'm at peace with that. I'll take the 17th overall pick. That's not the worst pick in the world. There are some players in the range that I think we can look at that can help fit the need. Maybe we get lucky and somebody falls to us just the same, maybe. But what we can't afford to do is to misuse that pick or write it off as something that doesn't need to be taken seriously. I saw in a mock draft, they had us taking a point guard, saying that since Jalen Hood-Schifino didn't pan out, we could use some point guard insurance. Maybe because we'd move on from D'Lo, we would need some point guard insurance. I do not think getting a point guard is the most pressing thing for us as currently constructed. Now, obviously, we can let go of things and then may need some things. So that's not a perfect science, depending on what the Lakers do. For all I know, we get rid of something that we have plenty of, and now we need a little more of it. Who knows? But I don't think the Lakers are going to make too many moves before the draft. I don't believe. Depends on when the draft falls. But I think free agency is after the draft. I'm not sure. But whatever the case may be, the Lakers need to have some idea what they want to do, what type of vision they want to have for the roster. If they're going to make wholesale changes, then we don't need to be trading picks. We need to be receiving them. If we're going to be rebuilding, I think that's the way to go. And, I think a lot of people feel the way I feel. Obviously, we're emotional, as Darvin said. You lose games the way we did and the way that we have against the same team over and over and over and over and over all the way 11 times over again. You get to a point where you do want to kind of just blow it up. And maybe that's not going to make us happier because we end up having a much worse team, not making the playoffs, poor basketball all season long, underdeveloped players going up against real good teams that could just have us watching blowouts, game to be over by halftime for years to come. That's a real thing. And so I'm not saying that I want to go back to ineptitude completely, but if we're not good enough to win a championship, then we might as well try to get be best for everybody that's on the team now. A guy like Anthony Davis, if he's not going to be winning championships, he needs to be somewhere where he is. There's no ifs, ands, or maybes. He is one of the best players in basketball. He can fit in a lot of different systems. He can put a lot of teams over the top. But what he gave us this year, he can make probably 25, 26 teams in this league champions. Couldn't do it for us because of how we constructed. But if you put him in Boston right now in place of Porzingis, they're going to win the championship. If you put him in Denver next to Jokic, they're going to win championships forever. If you put him in Minnesota, probably in place of Karl Towns, they're going to win championships. I just think that Anthony Davis is indeed enough for a lot of teams. So if you're not going to do what you need to do to keep him in contention, moving on from him gets us the best we can for his value, for which we probably would need in a rebuilding situation. If we could get a lot of picks for him, that would be great. Plethora of picks would be the way to go. Or, get yourself your Trae Young piece or what have you. But understand, if you're going to bring yourself a player like that, we talked about this yesterday, you got to make sure that they're right for the role that you're asking them to play. If you're going to ask Trae Young to play an off-ball role and insinuate all of his weaknesses and then ask him to play defense against bigger guards and all different types of stuff like that, you're going to bring yourself a much worse Trae Young. We do not need to have that vision for our future just because we like a big name. We got to be intelligent about who we bring to us or reserve our assets, what we have, for the right piece to come along. If we pull the trigger on the wrong piece, bring a guy here to be something he's not, it could put us in a hole like Russell Westbrook, and we got to show that we've learned from that mistake. We don't need to be going after names. We need to go after fit, and we need to be having a strong spirit about the collective mind of the team going forward. I thought this team was particularly weak in that way. Not a strong-minded team from player to player to player that came together to just kind of make for a team that could be pushed over by the same team 11 times. And for me, I don't want to overemphasize something that I feel is a weakness and then leave open a bunch of other holes for which need to be taken care of. But I do believe that the next vision for our team must have some Mamba to it. They got to have some killer to them. And there are certain players in this league that have that. I think of a guy like Colin Sexton. Think of a guy like Jamal Murray that come to mind quickly that I know are killers. And you know what I mean? That's the type of spirit I want on my team. You know, I need less D'Lo, more Jamal. Not to say you're going to find Jamal Murray anywhere because Denver would never let him go, but spirit of the player, you know what I'm saying? I'm just being honest. I don't need pushover minds no more. And I don't think our stars are particularly strong in that way. I don't think Bron and AD are particularly strong in that way. I know a lot of fans will disagree, but after watching those guys for 7 years, they're not like that. They have their strengths that are amazing, and they're Hall of Famers, and they're as good as advertised, but there's a certain spirit about them that is not going to will them a team up the mountain and force victories. They lost 11 times in a row, man. And the team around them looked pretty unorganized, and I think they allowed a bad coach to push them into ineptitude, and I think that the players that I want are not going to let that be the case. It was a lot of reacting to what was wrong instead of refocusing to what is right. What needs to be done, rather. You know what I mean? Like, throughout the course of LeBron's tenure here, he's been amazing. He's been persevering. He's been giving us what he has, and I've been very pleased and proud of having him on my team. But the one thing I think he wasn't able to bring to the table was a certain level of, it doesn't matter that things are going wrong, I'm still going to focus. That's one trait that he doesn't have from me, from where I'm sitting. If the referees are not calling the play, he's in front of the referees. I need him to get back down to court because we have a whole nother problem to consider. If you're out of position defensively, talking to refs while the game is being played. That's the focus I need from who needs to come into this situation. The referees, they may be corrupt as all hell, but one problem is them not calling the play, the foul. Another problem is what happens when you're talking to them when gameplay action is going on. You see what I'm saying? And that type of focus and that type of forget about it needs to be on this team. I think of a guy like Tim Duncan. He didn't really have that problem. He rarely got into it with the referees. They did kick him out a couple times here and there throughout the course of his career. But he usually understood that he wasn't going to leave stuff that's going on in live time to communicate with a referee for anything. If they didn't give me what I was supposed to get, I'll catch them when the ball isn't in play. But as far as me sitting down here talking to them or trotting back slowly, or if a guy's dropping his head because his body language ain't any good, I'm not going to be rolling my eyes at him. I'm too laser focused on what I need to do to win. It's that Kawhi Leonard never mind type attitude. That Jokic never mind type attitude. That's the piece that isn't here that we need. Somebody who is so damn, I don't care about what's going on around me. I'm just focused on live play. Or I'm really not overreacting or underreacting to anything. I'm just even keel, let's move. That's what was missing. And I think that's the type of spirit that you need on your team when going up against a team like the Denver Nuggets, who never takes a play off. You know what I mean? Who's going to attack your strengths and make them into not so strong things, like us attacking the paint, for example. You know, we needed laser focused players, and we didn't have that. We had guys who swayed with the circumstance. If the circumstance was going their way, they're up. If the circumstance ain't going their way, they're down. If the plays are being called the right way, they're up. If the plays aren't called the right way, they're unfocused. And that is what made us not a champion over the last several years. If anything, that's what kept us from being good enough to beat Denver Nuggets. And those are things that I'm thinking about. It's not as much about X's and O's this year as it was about mental toughness and basketball maturity. Basketball maturity, man. Guys just being mature enough to forget about the last play and go forward with the next one. Forget about the call that didn't go our way and go forward what we need to do to stay on track. And so these are things that I've been thinking about as I've been watching this team in this series particularly. I want that piece on the team, man. I don't know where you get that piece from. I don't know who has that spirit that I'm not thinking about. But it's some key guys out there that I would love to see a part of this unit. Or key characteristics that I would love to see a part of this unit if we're going to go forward with this unit. I don't think you can slap a superstar on this situation like Trae Young, who is not particularly strong in that area himself. You slap a superstar like Trae Young in this mix with Bron and AD after the season they've just had, where they were healthy all season long. I got a bad feeling that Trae Young's going to be running around with a bunch of role players because our stars aren't probably going to be healthy like they were last year. We got to work that into the equation. We are obviously too reliant upon AD. I think we did a better job of not being as reliant upon Bron with the personnel. But if you're going to go forward with Bron and AD, I would be of the mindset that it makes a lot of sense to not have to rely upon them as much. But if you bring in a undersized guard who shoots the ball a lot, you're going to have that problem still. You're still going to have that problem. Judging by what we just went through with the Denver Nuggets, to me it makes more sense to invest in another forward. To be honest with you, another guy who's going to slip in, either a forward or a center, who's going to slip in and give us that boosted size that matches up with Gordon and Porter better. Because that's what we're missing. When you start looking at your small forward position, maybe you say, okay, well, that was Vanderbilt. But Vanderbilt has some key weaknesses offensively that make it so that you don't have that dynamic. Rui, I don't believe is that player. Though I like him on the team, I don't want to rely upon him based on what I've seen to be that guy. And plus, we had him on the roster. It didn't translate to that. You need that bruiser or a 7-footer who's going to be able to play defense and score the ball, in a way that allows for you to match up with these teams that have this triple 7-footer dynamic, which I think a lot of teams are going to realize they need going forward. You got to have size, man. And get me a little 6-foot guard who specializes in drawing fouls. Once he put on that Laker uniform, he's going to find out them calls don't come his way like that. Now, I know a lot of people are going to laugh at me when I say that, but our stars don't get the whistle. We know that. Not like they should. Trae Young gets those whistles in Atlanta. I don't know that he would be able to draw the same floppy whistles that he get here. So the more I think about what Trae Young means as a player, the less I like bringing him to this situation. If we're rebuilding, I probably don't want to bring him in either because I don't think he'll be very good with a bad team, to say the least. He'll get his numbers, but the team will suck, and I don't think he'll be any happier here than he would be in Atlanta. It'd probably just be another Atlanta. So I would rather us try to refocus and say, okay, if I can get my center, so AD could play the 4. If I'm going to still go forward with Bron, maybe I bring in a 3 that can complement him so he can continue to play the 4. But somebody who's big enough to match up with Gordon and Porter, man. Because you're going to need that piece regardless. As these teams continue to move forward, you're going to see Houston is going to have that. They got nothing but big players, so as they develop, they're going to get better. It's rumored that the San Antonio Spurs, depending on what pick they get, may want to go big to put another shot blocker next to Wemby so that they have a twin tower effect like they used to have. I don't know if that makes sense. They probably need a little different stuff, but we'll see what they decide to do. But the point is, there are other teams in the Western Conference that you're going to have to consider size with. And if you're not building for size, then you're going to be getting beaten. You know, depending on what happens with Portland, depending on what pick they get, they may draft a guy like Sarr, put him next to Ayton. Now they got a big team, so you got to be able to foresee this stuff. With all that Utah has, you consider Markkanen's a 7-footer. Hendricks is going, if he develops properly, he's going to start getting into that lineup. He's like 6'8", 6'9", and then you consider what else they could put together with the unit that they have, with the bigs that they already have in place as well, Kessler and stuff like. I'm looking at some of these teams that are not very good, expecting them to take some type of jump, realizing that they have that dynamic, and we're going to have to match up with it. So if the Lakers are not thinking size, if you want to continue to go with Bron and AD as your front court, and then get some rinky-dink Taurean Prince small forward or something like that, or think Rui's gonna be enough, something like that. That vision is dead, man. You're gonna need another 7-footer in your starting lineup. And when the Lakers had that, you know we were champs. Who do you think these teams are trying to develop their team to look like? Lamar, Bynum, Powell, Kobe. That was when we were dominating, when we had the size. That's who these teams want to look like. You look at what Cleveland put together. You look at what Minnesota put together with Gobert and Towns. I mean, and McDaniels. You're going to have to deal with these teams. These are the teams you want to be able to match up with, along with Denver. So, you look at the piece that they got as well. Naz Reid. I mean, these dudes are big, man. These dudes are big. So if I'm the Los Angeles Lakers, if I draft anybody, I'm drafting somebody that's probably taller than 6'9", probably more than 240 pounds. And I'm putting him in a position to play. He's going to have a real role. So if he's too underdeveloped to be that, then he probably shouldn't come here. I tell you something else, man. I've talked about Dalton Knecht. I know he's a limited player in certain areas, but I think he would fit really well with this team. Because we need better executing bigs. Someone who could stretch the floor really well. And if he develops into what I think could be possible, he could be a 30-point scorer. He could be your Porter. I don't know if he's tall enough. I don't know if he plays any defense. I don't think. But when it's time to get a bucket and you're counting on that D'Lo to get your 30 points or Rui to get your 30 points, Dalton probably will get you those 30 points. You can probably count on him to score more as he develops. So I'm not saying we need to trade up to get Dalton Knecht or anything like that. I'm just saying if he's available, he probably shouldn't fall past 17. I have some questions about him. I'm not saying I've done all the homework of the players in that range, but when I think about tall dudes that execute well, somebody I could put in that front court, probably not overly defensive, which is a negative, but somebody who's going to make us significantly better, just hitting shots overall. We need more reliable shooters, scorers in general. I think Rui's good for that. But like I said, I've lost a little faith in Rui after this series. I just don't think he's going to be, his ceiling is as high as I thought it might be. His ceiling just might not be as high as I thought it was going to be. He's going to have to work on some very key areas. And I wonder if those areas are going to come naturally to him because he's not an American player. He's not a European player. He came from Japan, and they play a certain type of game. He's going to have to unlearn some things, I think, in order and start incorporating a little more American like ball movement and player and floor awareness. And I just don't know if he's going to develop that or not. I'm concerned he won't develop it. That's my worry with Rui. I'm genuinely concerned he's not going to develop the floor vision and awareness necessary to be that piece I need him to be. But I can use him just the same. I just have to temper my expectations for the role that he's going to be able to take over, which bothers me because he's very efficient as a scorer. But yeah, these are things that just as I've been watching, and like I said, I always want Vanderbilt on this team, but I don't want to rely on Vanderbilt for anything. I want him to be able to come in, play all 5 positions, basically be defensive. Salute to Kobe Minute. I don't want to rely upon him for nothing because he does have sufficient, very deficient offensive weaknesses, and because of it, I can't trust that the spacing won't be absolutely terrible with him on the floor. So if I can't audible out of him to a reliable player, I'm stuck with the spacing issues, and you can't have that going forward. It just can't happen. So that's really what it comes down to. I like Vanderbilt. Plus the injuries are starting to pile up. I don't know how much I can rely upon him going forward. So these are things that I'm just being honest about, man. We had our whole season without Vanderbilt. I don't think we were better for it. So I'm not on board with trading Vanderbilt. But I do need to bring in somebody that's going to be ahead of him at all times. I do need that. He needs to come off my bench. And then that's the only way I see it. Otherwise, he's going to be creating more of a problem offensively if he can't hit his corner shot and things like that. And I'm not relying upon him to do that. I want him to guard Murray. I want him to guard Ant-Man. I want him to do those things, and that's the only thing I really want him to do. Rebound the ball, make some passes here and there. I don't want to rely upon him offensively at all. So, like, these are things I'm thinking about for the next vision of the team, man. I think one of the things that we've been spoiled with is how easily LeBron James scores. Just guaranteed buckets no matter what when he's driving at the paint. I don't think anybody finishes in traffic better than him. And when he's gone, we're gonna miss him dramatically in that area specifically. He just finishes in traffic better than anyone I've ever seen in my entire life. No, nothing short of it. In situations where most people would turn the ball over in traffic or not connect in traffic or come at certain angles to lay the ball up and miss and stuff like that, he would not miss those angles. He's the best finisher in traffic of all time, in my mind. I really believe that. So I'd like to keep LeBron James on this team because I don't think scoring's going to come easy for whatever you bring together. Even if it's a superstar, you're going to have a harder time scoring. And I can rely upon him in that way. But the players that he has to bring, the players that need to be next to him, Anthony Davis, of course, love what he brings to the table defensively and offensively. He's had a fantastic series. The team has just failed him around him. So I'm not against keeping my core. I'm really not, because I know I'm not going to get better players in that way. But I'm also not against rebuilding entirely. That's to which we would really go down being like a 10-win, 12-win team if we're doing it correctly. Trying to get the first overall pick with next year's draft pick. So that's a nightmare that a lot of people don't want to think about. Probably won't get the pick since we're giving up, since New Orleans is going to give it to us this year in theory. So that's probably not the right path for this upcoming season. Probably do another year with LeBron James and Anthony Davis if they're willing to come back, or another 2 years, to be honest with you, until we can have all our picks replenished, because in 27 we wouldn't have our picks. So it's a lot of stuff that you're looking at there. You just say, yo, the Lakers really screwed up with the Russell Westbrook contract, bringing that in, because it then forced you to mortgage the 27 pick to get rid of him, with the Utah Jazz getting that pick. So it messes with our rebuild because you don't have your natural born picks. All your ineptitude or whatever you're going to do, suck in that particular year, depending on that year, if it's 27, it doesn't matter. It's going to Utah. If it's next year, it doesn't matter. It's going to New Orleans. So Lakers just screwed themselves. This is why you don't mortgage picks, and this is why you don't continue to mortgage picks, because there is going to be a day when you need to rebuild, and your own ineptitude will not be credited to what type of pick you get. You're going to be waiting on somebody else's good or bad season to determine who you're rebuilding your team with. That's a horrible position to put yourself in. It isn't worth it in most cases, in my opinion, especially since you're not getting championships off of the moves you're making. So that's why I would caution us about mortgaging any more picks. We're on the verge of being forced into a rebuild based on LeBron's age, and if you give away your picks, this is what I just described is going to be your reality. So we had that problem already with 27. We will have our 26 pick. We have this year's pick, and I think the Lakers should be trying to get some other people's picks and start the process of waiting on others to suck enough for our picks to be any good. We need to have those picks in place, or as I've said once before, try to get your picks back. Try to get Utah to give you your pick back. Literally. Try to make a good trade with Utah somehow and make sure your pick is involved in that trade. Because I don't, that's a real problem for me. I don't think it is for a lot of people who like kicking the can down the road, mortgaging this pick, that pick, 27, 28, 29. But you're going to have some years where you're going to really suck and it's not going to matter. You're just going to be sucking for nothing. Or you're going to be kicking the can down the road with more picks, trying to keep a superstar in place to keep that from ever happening. And it's going to always put you in a position to where you're mortgaging your future and kicking the can down the road for the inevitable to just come at some point any damn way. Not so I can get a guy like Trae Young and he can lose value in my uniform, or a guy like Donovan Mitchell who's playing well right now but then could go down with another knee injury. I'm not seeing that being the better path than getting picks rather than mortgaging them away when Bron is 40 years old. and he's going to be retiring any day now. So that's really what it comes down to, man. I'm already thinking about the rebuild, but I'm also looking at what we have, knowing that if we try to rebuild with it, it's going to be a long path toward us being any good, and we're going to be relying on others to get us good picks, which is not a good bet. A lot of teams can get better quickly. Some of the teams you think are really good could suck, and they could just by default move some of these other teams up. You think you're getting a bad team's pick, all of a sudden they get the first pick in the draft, and that dude's awesome. You don't. It's a bad science, let alone not a perfect one. So we need our own picks, man. And if anything, I'm trying to get mine back from Utah. If I'm the Los Angeles Lakers, that's probably your smartest move. And then you can let the bottom fall out in year 2027, and try to get the best player that year. But right now, you know, it's one of those situations where you probably don't want to tank next year, but year 2026 you probably do want to tank. But then if you tank in 26, whatever you're doing is going to be put off for another year, as I've already described, because you don't have it in 27. So it's like, and you're giving away some of your second round picks. You gave away like 4 second round picks for Rui, which I think we could live without second rounders, but they're still valuable assets. So I don't know, man. I don't know. The safest thing in my mind is to try to do whatever I can to get more picks, not get rid of them, not to retool around a 40-year-old and around Anthony Davis, who had probably the healthiest season he's ever going to have just now. That's not it. If I'm going to bring myself anything, it's going to be something that can garner me more picks when I retrade it. And maybe you feel Trae Young is that, but I'm telling you, you bring him to the wrong role and he's going to be a worse player. Especially in the Western Conference, where it's harder to get personal accolades. Much harder. So, yeah, do have all of that in mind, man. Do have all of that in mind. So, I'm already in off-season mode, as you can clearly see. This season is a wrap for me. I don't really give a damn about the rest of this series. The Lakers can win the next game, lose the next game. I don't give a damn, because at the end of the day, you're not beating the Denver Nuggets 4 straight. It's not happening. That gives us a 0% chance to do that. 0. Even with injuries, we're not beating them 4 times in a row. So, yeah, that's it. We're in off-season mode, and I think the Lakers need to consider what their options are. I've laid down a lot of my thoughts here for you. You can go out and check some of my old videos as well, see how some of that stuff aged. But I think the best thing for the Lakers to do is to consider all that's in front of them and calculate their decision carefully, very carefully. Because if you mortgage your future trying to make this little team a little better, I can almost assure you you're not winning the championship with this unit. And then from there, I can almost assure you that you're going to suck a lot longer when you do need to rebuild, which is coming very soon, because of what it is that you do to try to make this team a little better. So we'll see what LeBron wants to do in the offseason. If he does re-sign with us, that'd be great. If he does want to leave, hopefully we can negotiate some type of sign and trade, which benefits us, although I don't know if he'd be inclined to do that at all. Maybe not. Probably not. But that's why you trade him in midway through the season this year. That was my argument. And it was for all of the reasons I just described. So I like to keep him, but I also know he could fall off a cliff any moment. He's 40, I'm 40. I get it. So this is just a bad situation, man. It's probably going to tumble forward to us having to trade Anthony Davis for our rebuild. And when you trade Anthony Davis, you understand you're not getting back a better defender probably ever again. He's one of the best defenders you've ever had, probably one of the best defenders you ever will have, and you just didn't put him in positions to look as strong as he should have, because you asked him to guard people he shouldn't have been asked to guard. It's God's honest truth. But he made up for a lot of people's mistakes a lot of the time. And that's really what I have to say about Anthony Davis. I'm very pleased with him, but I just don't see a path to us getting as good as we need to get to make all this make any sense, man. I don't see a path. I don't. Maybe even with a better coach. Maybe if we strike it rich with a Spoelstra or something like that, he might be able to squeeze in a championship out of this situation before we leave. But you're not getting Spoelstra. He's not leaving Miami to come coach you. Nor would I tell him to be honest with you. So it's really bad, man. The thing that would make me most happy right now is the Lakers can just find a way to get their pick back from the Utah Jazz, to be honest with you. If Utah would be ever so inclined to return our pick to us, that would make me the most happiest, because then I can go forward with my rebuild, bottom out, and let my own ineptitude guide me toward the top picks in the draft in the next several years. If that's what my intentions are, even if it's not, it still gives me the option to do so. If for some reason LeBron rolls an ankle and is out for the season, then I could just suck all year and just know that my ineptitude will gain my pick. But because the Lakers keep mortgaging future away, you don't have that asset, man, and you need it. Whether you know it or not, you need that asset. So that's what I want Rob to do. I want to get my damn picks back. get my picks back. You're not getting it back from New Orleans, but 27, I would try to swing away to really get that back in real life. So yeah, that's what I gotta say, man. I don't know, man. Firing Darvin Ham is obviously, that should be a done deal. I mean, I don't even think it's worth discussing at this point. Everybody said he needs to go. He's shown every reason he needs to go. Even though you have to pay him for the next 2 years, I think it's worth it at this point. He's that bad of a coach for us. I don't see any upside in keeping him. I don't think he's going to make us good enough to get a championship at any point in the future or anything like that. I think the players have tuned him out. Your stars can't stand him. There's no reason to bring him back. So the argument about whether or not he's keeping his job, it just comes down to if people are willing to pull the trigger on something they need to do. And if they drag their feet, that reflects poorly upon them at this point. Believing in him is a mistake. Period. And going forward with him any further is a mistake. Period. So, just like in any other situation, when it's time to fire a coach, it just comes down to the front office. Are they going to do it or not? You know what I mean? It's time. He should be gone after game 4 if we lose the game. And that's what I expect to happen. If I'm being honest with people, I don't really think he's coming back. I don't think he actually probably wants to come back. I'd be surprised if he wants to coach this team any longer. I wouldn't be entirely shocked if he resigned. Would not be, especially after what Anthony Davis said. So yeah, man. Hopefully, some variation of that is our reality very soon, and we'll talk about that as it comes. But that's where my head is, man. I mean, in a perfect world, you want your talking heads to still be locked into the playoffs. So we have another playoff game. Maybe we can extend the series. Some team someday is going to come back from an 0-3 deficit, and I want to acknowledge that I think it's going to happen someday. But this team doesn't have the characteristics and the traits, nor do they match up well enough, nor is their team going to morph into what it needs to by way of the coaches making adjustments to make it so that they match up. All these different things are working against them. It's not happening, if I'm being honest with you guys. Darvin Ham would have to change some things. Guys would have to play well in doing so. It's a lot of things that would have had to have led up to the changes necessary in order for us to be confident and cohesive enough when those changes are made. And Darvin hasn't prepared us for any of that. He quite honestly has not prepared you for what you need to turn into in order to match up with the Denver Nuggets. Then you need the Denver Nuggets to start playing even worse. Their confidence is sky high. So it's just a lot of stuff coming up against you. Guys are checked out. Guys like D'Lo already looking at his phone, checked out at the end of a basketball game that he played poorly in. That was a bad look for D'Lo, man. That was really a mature look for D'Lo. Being on his phone while there was a timeout, he should have been all in. You got to think about what's going to be a friend to your future, is what I would say to D'Lo. If you're coming up on free agency, that's not the last image people need to be seeing of you before it's time for you to get paid. You got to love yourself enough to do what you need to do to make yourself look good. If one thing about Darvin Ham, he loves himself enough to say the things necessary to make himself look good. That's what I'll say. And D'Lo needs to adapt to that type of mentality. Don't. If everybody's killing you, don't kill yourself. You know what I'm saying? And him being on his phone, you know what I'm saying, and all of that just makes him look like a child, man. And ain't nobody going to pay no child no big money to play no basketball, bro. Especially after they went 0 for 4, 0 for 8, and all these different things he's done this series. Benched the last 2 years in the playoffs. If you don't help yourself by at least putting forth the guys that you're mature and that you're ready to ball out and be coachable, then you're hurting yourself. Don't be mad at nobody for not giving you what it is that you want, because you're showing them that you don't want it. So I thought D'Lo really hurt himself last night. And I know it was a frustrating situation. I don't know where his head was at, but it definitely wasn't where it probably should have been to make him look as good as he probably want to look. And he's going to pay for that, unfortunately. So I don't expect he'll be a Laker next year. Not even if he opts in, I'm pretty sure we'll move on from him. And that's that. So as far as me saying, hey, the Lakers can come back, the only way I see the Lakers coming back is if Jokic, Gordon, Porter, and Murray all twist their ankle at once and are out for the series. Then we have to go up against that bench, and I think we can beat that bench 4 games in a row. Other than that, there ain't nothing. There ain't nothing there, man. So if they happen to win a game, gentlemen sweep. We take it back to Denver, and we'll be blown out there. That's how I see this going. It ain't gonna get much better than that. I think this team's checked out. So that's really what I gotta say, man. I wanted to give y'all nice long videos. A lot of things on my mind, as you can clearly see. Lakers season is done in my mind, and now we're in the off season. So that's where my conversation is going to be catered to going forward. We'll assess the decisions this front office makes. And look, man, I don't know how many more years I'm going to be supporting them if this doesn't go right. If they do something else that I don't agree with and it gives us these type of results, I'm going to be wanting a lot of them out. I know a lot of people already do. I'm not quite going to get rid of Rob Pelinka yet. But if he mortgages any more of my picks for a piece that's going to lose value, or if he takes another Jalen Hood-Schifino, that's going to be where the conversation goes. Cut the head of the snake off and rebuild with somebody else who's better. You know, that's what it's going to be. So you got one more chance with me, Rob. I'm not particularly unhappy with you, but a lot of people are, and rightfully so, given how this thing has resulted. We are not good enough. Some of the vision that you put together was not good enough. It couldn't withstand injury, and it needs to be able to. Whatever you're building next needs to be able to withstand more injury possibilities and still be upright. That's key. So that's what I gotta say, man. Still go Lakers. We ain't going nowhere, but we definitely done with this unit. And that's pretty much what I have to say, man. We'll watch on Saturday. We'll do the same thing that we do to end the season. We'll complete what we started, but I don't expect nothing. I'm already in my off-season mode. And I'm okay with that. It's literally fine. BDL 44. I thank y'all for watching. I'm out.